we have our legislative panel. We're going to do some questions. So let me go down. I'm going to let every legislator just introduce themselves and tell you where they're from. And then we're going to get into some questions and answers. They'll have an opportunity to do a closing statement. I want to mention that we've got a couple of freshman legislators just got elected in November, haven't even been to their first session, and they came here today, so I'm really appreciative of that. But we've got both Democrats and Republicans, House members and senators, so we're really proud of that. So we'll start off with you, Senator Latbella.
Thank you, Barney. I'm Jack Latbella. I represent Senate District 20, which is northern Pinellas County, and I want to apologize in advance that I'm going to have to leave a little bit early. I had another engagement I have to be back in St. Petersburg for.
Hi, I'm Representative Dennis Baxley, Florida House District 23, serving Ocala and Marion County. And I am very, very grateful to see this many legislators here and to interact with you. And I just thank each of you for the part that you do for public safety. If there's any role for each of us, it definitely is public safety, and that's legitimate. So thank you to each of my legislative colleagues who've spent time here learning. I know I've learned a lot just in the last day or two here. And the fact that you're here and shows that we share the objectives of a safer Florida is an important one, and there's many ways to get there. So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for the Alliance for helping us build a safer Florida.
Good morning, I'm Kerry Pigman. I'm the representative from the 55th District, which is Highlands, Okeechobee, Glades, and Western St. Lucie. I'm that person in the trenches last night who, with two of my sheriff's deputies, were wrestling down a crank and PCP intoxicated individual with underlying bipolar disorder. So issues of dual diagnosis are particularly relevant to me.
And he happens to be a medical doctor, an MD.
Oh yeah, that. I'm Kristen Jacobs. I represent District 96, which is Broward County, former mayor and commissioner from Broward County. And I'm here to learn, and this day will end, but my learning curve is not. So for all of you there out there in the audience, I would appreciate all your wisdom to share with me. I'm up in Nosebleed Row where they put the Democratic freshmen, 1402. So write it down. Please come visit me. I'd love to get to know you better.
And she is a freshman legislator.
Hi, I'm Michelle Raywinkle Vasalinda, and this is my second Justice Summit. I represent District 9, which is a portion of Leon County. I'm very proud to do that, and I have two great constituents here who have been responsible for educating me. Agnes Fury, who is here, who works in death penalty issues and humanizing the criminal justice system, and also Pat Tothill, who I'm very proud is here and made it here today. I have been appointed to the Judiciary Committee for the first time and look forward to working on those issues. I am probably opposite to some of the folks here on the panel, but we all have respectful attitudes toward one another, and I'm very proud to serve with the people in the legislature. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Colleen Burton. I represent District 40, which is the city of Lakeland and other parts of western Polk County. I am also a freshman legislator. Delighted and honored to have been appointed to the Judiciary Committee. So I look forward to working with my colleagues, learning from not only them, but certainly all of you in the audience about how we best serve the citizens of the state of Florida. Thank you.
Well, I guess I'm still Ray Pilon, District 72 right here in Sarasota. I want to thank you all for blessing us with your presence here today. I hope you've enjoyed our community. Look forward to you all coming back in November. Last year when we were on the panels, I can tell you we had a great conference. Smart Justice had a great conference. Because of you, we have, and the staff and the agenda, I think we've topped that, and I think we need to give Barney and everybody another round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chevron Jones. In my second term, I represent House District 101, which is the last 6 cities of Broward County. This is my first Justice Summit, and I think I timed it just right because I arrived just in time for the panel, so I'm happy to be here with you all this afternoon.
I'm Joe Geller, also a freshman. I represent the district next to him, which is District 100 It's actually, contrary to your book, I'm not Fort Lauderdale, I live in Aventura. The district is a little more Dade than Broward, but it covers northeast Dade and southeast Broward. Obviously, as a freshman, this is my first time here, but I might know Barney Bishop longer than anybody in the room, over 30 years. And when he asked me to come, there's just no saying no ever to Barney. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm happy to meet some of my colleagues that I haven't had the opportunity to even shake hands with or see yet. And particularly, I'm very happy to be here to help prove that smart justice is not an oxymoron, that it's something that's achievable with enough work and enough dedication and enough just sticking to it and finding solutions, and I hope to be part of that.
I'm Larry Ahern from Pinellas County, District 66, which serves Seminole, Largo, and Clearwater and the beaches west of there. I also sit on, and it's probably the reason, one of the main reasons I wanted to be sure to be here today, because it's my first time on the Justice Appropriations Committee as a third-term legislator. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and hopefully some of the solutions to, our day's so many promising hopes that Florida has with so many problems in our justice system today, that hopefully we can solve some of those here with your input and some of the legislators.
I'm Representative Jimmy T. Smith from Citrus County. I represent all of Citrus and part of Hernando, District 34. And I had to tell you, this summit has been phenomenal in the aspect of it is very critical to think of, well, we have problems in our communities. And to bring this to light and to bring so much influence is very important. In Tallahassee, if you want to get anything changed, you have to have a grassroots answer to the issue, because we can't come up with it. You need to. And this has been a great summit to provide those answers.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dane Eagle from District 77, City of Cape Coral, parts of Matlacha and Lee County. I want to thank you all for having us this afternoon. It's an honor to be on this panel. When I was first elected in 2012, before you go into session, the speaker asks what committees would you like to serve on, and you go ahead and put in your requests, and sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't get anything you want. Speaker Weatherford was very generous and gave me 4 or 5 committees that I requested. The 5th was Criminal Justice Subcommittee. And I'm thinking, what gives? I don't even know anything about this. The irony is it became my very favorite committee. By far was the most passionate about the issues of all my committees, and just loved the detail, the complexity. Got to work very closely with some of you in the room. Barney, thank you for all of your wisdom and advice throughout the process. And I requested again this year. I did not get on it. It doesn't mean I don't remain committed to some of the issues, some of the unfinished business, and honored to be here to discuss them with you today.
Representative Eagle, would you mind telling my wife about the wisdom part?
I might have exaggerated a little bit, but there's some there. There's some there.
Is she here?
Good for Dan.
You can tell House members they don't get to talk a lot because there's so many of them, and they take every opportunity they can.
You should know, you used to be one.
I'm Senator Greg Evers. I represent District 2 in the Panhandle of Florida. Actually, I represent L.A., Lower Alabama. Thus, the brogue that I have. But you know, one of the things that this makes actually my third 2 years of serving as chair of criminal justice. When it was first given to me back 5 years ago, I thought to myself, you know, I had a lot of prisons because at that time I only represented about 11 in the state of Florida, all along the Panhandle. And I had very deep concerns for the safety of the residents in the Panhandle and the state of Florida, as well as the correction officers that work at those institutions, along with the inmates. And I think, you know, now it's come to light, all of the problems that I had seen at that time are coming to fruition today. And you have my word, because of the fact that, you know, it seems like this has been my calling, that I'm going to try to do the best I can to keep you safe, keep your children safe, and keep Florida safe. And thank you so much for being here and your input into what the Criminal Justice Committee should be looking at, because I think this has been the most informative and been the best conference I have ever been to. God bless you all.
So now I'm going to ask a series of questions. I'm not going to direct them to any particular legislator, but if you have an opinion about it, please let me know, raise your hand, and you can answer the question. And then I would hope that some other legislators might say I agree, or maybe even somebody might say I disagree. So this is going to be a back and forth conversation. Got a number of questions. I'm going to start with the first question, which is this. There are about 4,000 female inmates that leave the Florida prisons every year. Yet in the state, we only have about 200 beds for those women that are coming out of prison for transition, reentry, and work release. And women have the best non-recidivism rate. So I wanted to ask any legislator, senator or representative, would you support more services for female inmates? Since if we're successful, we may be reuniting these women with their children. Senator Levin.
Thank you, Barney. I'm going to try to do this one because for two reasons. First of all, because I have to leave, and second, because some of my favorite people in the world are females. None of them, I don't think, in the correction system today. But you know, we do have obviously a need in this area. And, you know, I would cite the tremendous success that we've had with programs for females who were troubled, younger females were troubled, when we started programs like PACE. The PACE program has been phenomenally successful at taking some young women who would have wound up in our criminal justice system if they hadn't gotten redirected, and has directed them in the right fashion to productive lives. And so I think the same type of approach with that we've used there on the front end would work exceptionally well on the back end, and those that are leaving the system, and I certainly would support more resources for that.
Great. Who else would like to respond? Representative.
You know, Barney, earlier there was a judge on one of your panels that talked about how, you know, a good mother at home fixes a lot of things. And fundamentally, if you look at children, you want to break the cycle of people who get involved. First and foremost, you need to have strong women at home. And the women who come out of the system need that support so they can go home and they can take care of their children. Or if they're yet to have children, they'll have learned from their mistakes and provide better families. The best way to prevent the cycle from continuing is to make sure you support women within the system.
Great. Representative Baxley?
Yes, and the answer to that question is yes. I think the success rate could be much higher with women. Couple of, you know, this all comes back to personal relationships. And I had a very amazing attorney that assisted me, a woman on the education committee. She went to a party, had too much to drink, was in an accident, killed 2 people on the way home. This person changed my life. Inmates were real to me. I realized what kind of barrier she had. She owned her problem. She didn't blame anybody else for her problem. But she needed help making her way through that system as an inmate. Lowell Prison is in my district, is the reception center for all these women who go all over the place. And I got a call that she was there. They'd moved her during the night. And I went out there and met with her, and she was just shaking like a little puppy, scared to death. And I'll never forget that experience and how important it is to remember these are real people, and they will come home. She's one of those model inmates we won't have to spend any money on. Matter of fact, she can help a lot of other people, and she did while she was there. And I did everything I could to help her move along in that process so that she's accountable. But she also experienced redemption and a chance to renew and make things right with the family. It all comes back to a personal relationship. When you know an individual who's gone through the process and you get to learn that process. This opened a door for me to meet a lot of the women at the Lowell prison. And what I found is there's an enormous amount of liability here on the part of men. Most of these women that I met in prison came under the domination of some evil man. And that's why they're there. That and things that happen, substance abuse, history of abuse. There's always a story. But rather than self-identifying as victims, to help them self-identify as in charge of their own life and say, whatever happened, it's your life now. What are we going to do from here forward? So I think there will be a tremendous payoff for those things that we do to facilitate their success for reentry. And what we often forget is that 87% of these 100,000 people that are in our state prison, they're coming home to live with you. They'll be at Walmart with you. Their kids will be in school with your kids, your grandkids. We have to make a difference. We don't want to run just a Department of Incarceration. Yes, we have a paramount duty to keep everybody safe there. But we also want to see that recidivism. We run a Department of Correction, not a Department of Incarceration. We want to correct something where we can. And I think the more opportunity that we can engage that, and I think it's very strong with the women population from the numbers that I see, we could see a real turnaround. Because when we drive down, the ultimate measure will be recidivism. And if these women do not come back, if we can get the sign up, don't come back, we'll equip you with some things so you don't need to come back. We have changed the world, and we have eliminated, every time you have a reoffense, you have new victims of crime. So our public safety responsibility is to stop that process, interrupt it, whether it's drugs, domination by some evil man, or whatever is causing that thing to turn the wrong way. We have an opportunity to correct. Not with everybody. Some people are not ready, but a lot of them are. And our assessment tools are getting better and better. I believe we can operate a smarter system, and we can look at states where they're winning. We can do those things that are tried and true. We don't have to experiment. And that's the path we're on. And we're seeing a giant ship turn. The amount of legislators you see here today, it's because this movement is moving. And part of that is because of you, a big part of it. So thank you for staying in the game. And I absolutely believe that focusing on women inmates could have a great payoff.
Representative Vassalenda.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Used to serve on the board of the PACE School for Girls in Tallahassee, Florida. And when Senator Latvella brought up PACE, I think we can see the common sense sort of rollout from the success that's happened at PACE to what we could do with women who have been in prison and been incarcerated. And it is such a common sense answer that I think we just need to go ahead and work on this. The one thing I would add, though, is whatever we're learning about how women are able to re-enter easier, perhaps we can apply some of those lessons to how we can help men re-enter easier and more smoothly and more successfully. Thank you.
Okay, did Representative Burton, did you have your hand up, Sue, too? Okay, I forgot to mention, she's a freshman legislator as well from Lakeland, so we're happy to have you here.
She
Joe.
doesn't want to talk.
And just very quickly, and I don't want to diminish the role of fathers either in a family. It's also very important. But the reality is that, even focusing on these women themselves, that they may not be, as Representative Baxley said, they may not be victims. They've done things, but their children surely haven't. And even today in our society, and again, I don't want to diminish the role of fathers, but women have still primary child rearing, and it's these kids that are the real victims. So we really do need to make, I think, even an extra effort here, because it's not just the inmates we're focusing on. We have that, as someone, I think it was Representative, that whole other generation, maybe it's Representative Smith, that whole other generation still coming up, and they need their moms desperately. So we really need to remember they are victims.
And that's important. I think we learned yesterday at the summit that there are about 64,000 children whose parents in Florida are in prison. Is that right, Secretary Sutton? About 64,000. Right. Okay. So 64,000. So.
And can I just add
Sure,
one comment to that?
Representative.
It isn't that it isn't important to address reentry, but we really have got to get better at trying to figure out how we prevent them from getting there in the first place. And I don't think we're spending enough attention on the front end. We're wasting a whole lot of money on the back end. Families need our support. Women and children need our support on the front end. I think perhaps more than they need us on the back end.
And Barney, just one of your other questions I know also had to do with visits of children with both their mothers and their fathers, very important. And I don't know if that's where you want to segue, but I'll just say, since we're talking about, and it went that way, that's also a really important thing to do to help these children who are all innocent.
Yeah, in fact, we had a panel on the first day called Reuniting Families Left Behind, and it's so important. And one of the sponsors that we had here, if you got a book, it was on the Bridges of America table. Bridges of America worked with Sesame Street. They created a brand new character called Alex, and Alex is, his parent is in prison. And so they created a character and they created a book. My second goddaughter happens to have her father in prison right now. She's 4.5, and she just started asking on her birthday in August, where was her father? So I pulled out the book and started reading it to her and talking to her about it. And I know it made both her mother and me and my wife comfortable about trying to talk about those things. But let's go to another question. Only about 23% of the 30-some-odd thousand inmates that leave prison every year get any kind of services. And that's because the Florida legislature hasn't yet given more money to the department. And I know it's a huge department, but they need more money to provide education, substance abuse, and mental health services. Because we have 101,000 people in prison. About 87% of them are going to be out within 5 years. So about 13% are going to be in for a very long time. While we have them in our custody and control, what do you think about providing more services to them so that before they re-enter society, we have a better chance of even lowering the recidivism rate even more than we have now? Anybody? Senator Evers?
Well, first of all, I think that what we need to look at is we need these inmates to have a profession or have the ability to be a productive part of society. They need to have a trade. They need to have life skills to where they can balance a checkbook. They also need a support staff or a support foundation, whether it be through a church, whether it be through a release center, that will allow these inmates to come back in when they have problems and work with the inmates. I feel like that's the best way that we can take these inmates, make them a productive part of society, let them pay their dues, and now that's only the ones that we're just a little upset with. But that other 13%, we're not going to let them out anyway, so it's okay. But those are the ones that we need to concentrate on. And I feel like that it's going to take some upfront money on the front end, but then in a few years we're going to start realizing the savings that we will be able to get from that, because these folks will not be coming back to prison, and then we'll reunite families.
I'll back up what the senator here said, the very wise senator. I wish we could learn some more here. What's the quote that you said earlier? And I'm being serious, that Barney had said.
Well, it's there's certain inmates that we're just mad with, and there's certain inmates that we're scared of.
Exactly.
And the ones we're scared of, we lock them up and throw away the key.
I'll tell you, when I first came into, as a 29-year-old coming into the legislature, serving on criminal justice subcommittee, I had to lock them up and throw away the key mentality. And it's certainly, as you learn these issues and get to experience them more, you know that's not the case. That 13%, certainly, there's probably no way we're going to rehabilitate them, and it's a lost cause. And we need to make sure they're not on the streets wreaking havoc and preying victim on Florida families, Florida children. So we need to lock them up. It's that other percentage that perhaps needs some rehabilitation. Perhaps they didn't have the right upbringing. Some, a slap on the wrist is all you need to put the fear of God back in them and say, all right, I'm never going down that path again. And some of those folks, maybe they had the right upbringing to begin with. They had the right skills that they need just to get back out there and get back on the right track on their own. The rest, let's say we put them in prison with that 13%, that are just wreaking havoc. They're going to come out worse off just by being in that vicinity. So we lock them up with them, we let them back out, and all of a sudden they're worse than they were the day we put them in. So yes, we need to focus more on that. How do we help them? How do we do that? And fortunately in Florida we do have a balanced budget amendment. We need to go in and make sure that we're not spending more than we take out. And that's great. And that does restrict us, unfortunately. If we had all the money in the world, let's throw it at this criminal justice system. Let's rehab everybody. After all, the first line of our Constitution says to protect or to ensure domestic tranquility. That's the number one job of our government. But we need to find the funding, and we need to do it right. We need to do it responsibly. The fact that we have this many legislators up here says that we're committed to it. And as long as our state continues to grow the way it is, and our revenue continues to come in just based on our current tax basis, I think we'll be able to fund that a little bit better and do it smartly.
Representative Jones.
Yeah, thank you. You know, this is an issue that I'm definitely passionate about. When I ask my office about a lot of the constituent calls that come in to the office, this is the main topic of individuals not being able to re-enter back into society. So the question that we have to begin to ask ourselves is, are we starting the re-entry process too late? Should re-entry start in the prison? Should we start giving them the trade? Should we start educating them while they're in there, and you continue re-entry after they get out? Because then what you have is, look, as we have it now, the individual get out of jail. Once they get out of jail, now I have to try to re-enter back into society. Of course, I'm going to become frustrated now if trying to re-enter back into society. Once I get frustrated, now guess what? I'm going back into the system because what? I was getting free food, I was getting free health care, and I didn't have to go through all of that in jail. So now, can you help me re-enter? So I think we're starting too late. I think we should start re-entry in the prison and continue it once they get out.
Now, just so that you know, Representative, we do start re-entry in the prisons, but unfortunately, because of the amount of money that the department has to focus on this one issue, they don't have enough money. They can only help 23%. So 77% of the inmates don't get anything, and these are people that are being released back. So what we're talking about then is trying to put more money into the department, focus it in on this area, because if we do, and we have an opportunity to lower recidivism, it'll save money and we can keep reinvesting. Representative Baker.
Thank you, and I guess that helps me a little bit. I had a few questions about this question, so to speak, because of the numbers were so low. You know, are there people on a waiting list? Because you have to want to seek help, and certainly if people are serving 15-year sentences, it's going to be a different scenario than someone who's, you know, at either the tail end of a shorter sentence. And then, and I think Senator Evers touched on it, you know, what are we giving them, and how are we measuring that? Is there some accountability built into the system that says, you know, these are the things that you're going to need, you know, some of these basic, he said, life skills, and that's not on here with the GED and substance abuse. And, you know, what type of programs can we give people that ultimately only end up with a $50 and a bus ticket sometimes? How are they going to really deal with that?
So let's talk about that just for a second. The two things, and Secretary, correct me if I'm wrong, the two most important things for an inmate is, number one, get them an education. The average educational attainment for an inmate in Florida is the 6th grade. That's not going to get them a job. And then number two is to help resolve their underlying issue of substance abuse or mental health. If we can attack those two issues, then the chances of them succeeding is great. About 40,000 of the 100,000 inmates in Florida are there for only about less than 4 years. They're third-degree nonviolent felons. Those are the people that are going in and out very quickly. And so those are the people that we especially want to target, because as they come in and out, they tend to escalate and become more violent over time. These are mostly substance abusers that are breaking into your house or stealing something from my car because they're trying to satisfy their addiction, or they have a mental health issue and they're self-medicating. So there's a lot of people on that list, and the department wants to provide those services. We just need to get the money to the department to help do that. Representative Geller.
You know, let's carve out just one little thing here. I mean, the benefits of vocational training, I think the Senator talked about, that's obvious. And attacking substance abuse successfully, my ex-wife works in that field as well as mental health, and those have real possibilities of helping. But we need to remember that some of these people have mental health issues that are just not going to get solved. And to that extent, we need to stop warehousing them in the Department of Corrections to begin with. That's really not where they belong. Their culpability is less because depending on, again, the nature, there's, minor mental health issues. But if these are serious ones, we need to be looking not just at the inmate population, but what are the services we provide as a society for people with mental health issues? We still have the right and the need to be safe from those people. But on the other hand, the ability to focus on re-entry for people that have serious mental health issues is very limited, and there's just no place for them to go. They get dumped into the prisons, and then they get dumped out of the prisons. And the question is, what can we do outside the corrections context as a society to have some place to help these people, to keep these people safe from themselves, while keeping the rest of us safe from them too?
And that's a great lead into my next question, which is the Wall Street Journal and the USA Today have just been doing a series of stories about mental health. In fact, one of the series in USA Today profiled Judge Steve Leifert, who's the head of all the mental health courts and state county court judge in Miami-Dade County. He's been at our past 2 summits. So this series is focused on the issue of mental health, both before you go to prison, once you're in the criminal justice system, afterwards. So consequently, many of these people then act out, they get arrested, they end up in the system, and they end up in our prison. So how important is this an issue? We know for you, Geller, Representative Geller, it's an important issue, but for the rest of y'all, how important is mental health of an issue for you? And what do you think the state could do about it other than just money? Because that always is a problem, but Representative Pigman and then Representative Smith.
You're kind of probably wondering why is an emergency medicine physician here at Smart Justice. The thing that gets me most excited in the morning is looking at ways that we can look at medical health care and behavioral health care and come up with efficiencies and effectiveness. What that means is getting better results for the dollars we're investing currently, because likely there's not a lot of extra money out there. And to that end, I also have to relate that, as I said in my opening monologue, I see dual disorders as really being the core of what interacts with emergency health care and in the legal system. So removing the stigma from the behavioral health perspective, recognizing that you have to take care of both the substance abuse and the underlying behavioral health issue are critical. So what does that mean to me? What that means to me is more effectively using our master's trained level counselors in behavioral health, giving them the independence to do practice to the full extent of their training and skill set, providing them with prescriptive authority as well, is critical towards achieving that kind of efficiency in the system. In addition, looking at how we have statutes and how we have rules and regulations in the state of Florida that prevent our current providers from working efficiently. Now, the reason that's a little bit controversial is that there's a lot of people who benefit quite well from the way we have things now, and they're very resistant to change. And it takes someone who's a little bit willing to shake things up, to bring about those kind of changes, to bring in those efficiencies. And it's just not master's level trained counselors, it's also peer-to-peer, which is perhaps one of the most important groups that we need to bring in and enfranchise in a formal care delivery model. Because a lot of us at this table are a little bit reluctant, at least on the healthcare end, to put more money in a system that we don't feel certain is not at its effectiveness and efficiency. So my book of business is try to improve how we do it, and then maybe later ask for more money.
Right. And throughout this summit, we've talked about evidence-based programs that document that, so that's great. Representative Smith, I know you had your hand up.
Oh yes, definitely. Well, one of the things that I find back in my community, and a little bit of my background, I come from a very blue-collar family. I mean, everything from mowing your lawns to doing construction in your house, and you know, I've been a bug guy and things like that after I retired from the military. And I'll tell you, we have to get ahead of this. A lot of what we're talking about is actually reactive, not proactive. So fundamentally, when we see these families coming back, we talked about the mother earlier, when we see that mother coming back, guess who's going to have a problem? The children. But not only that, we kind of can somewhat identify that. But I can tell you within my own family, I've seen my brothers and sisters at times be negative towards their children. You know what? You're dumb. Oh, you'll never succeed in this. You know what? You just better be strong because you're not smart enough. And you can see the mental health breakdown in the student. Then they go to school, and because they're feeling negative, guess what's going to happen? They're going to fail in the classrooms. And because they're failing in the classrooms, they're going to get special programs and be identified. And you can see that structural breakdown. And truthfully, in society, Those of us who are either concerned about this because we're legislators and in the professions, you have a broken leg and a heart attack back home, man, everybody will say, man, are you better? And man, what can we do to help you? But if you have mental health issues, for the average individual, suck it up and drive on is what we had in the military, and back home it's like, well, you just need to be better, or maybe you just need a break, or you know what, go take a cruise. That will fix everything for you. And the truth is we do not, as a society, take mental health issues from the very beginning of an individual life as important as we do with physical health issues, and we need to change that perspective.
Representative Besselin and then Representative.
Thank you. You know, so one of the exercises I like to do in my head when I look at problems is looking toward the future as to what people will look at when they look back at us 25, 50 years from now. And I think about all the mentally ill folks that we now have in prison and how we're treating them. And I can't help but wonder that when people look back, maybe even 100 years from now, they're going to see that we didn't make that much progress from Bedlam when mentally ill folks were institutionalized, because it's really inhumane to put someone who is mentally ill in a prison population. I mean, just really think about that. It's not only inefficient, ineffective, and expensive, but it's really not humane. And so I think, Barney asked, what could we do with regard to, without money, to solve this situation? And I think just thinking about it, attitude change, as Representative Smith just spoke about, is to talk about and think about how we would be perceived by our children and our children's children going forward. And I think that we also do need to put some money to this. We are, I don't know where our ranking is right now, but Florida has been ranked really pretty low as to how. 49. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I didn't want to be misquoted. But so we need to look at that too, because money, as Barney said, money is the mother's milk of politics. Well, money also often does help fix problems. I do think the first thing is an attitudinal problem and change that, but I also think we need to be looking at putting more money into getting to solutions. So thanks very much for listening.
Great. Representative Ahern.
Thank you. Thank you. I talked to my sheriff about this issue, and Representative Pigman's comments, especially about the system that is broken. And he gave me an example of some deputies on St. Pete Beach that a lady that was obviously mentally challenged and disturbed attacked the deputies with a steak knife held over her head, and they would have had any good reason to shoot her. But because of their training and the crisis intervention deputy was also on the scene, they were able to kind of back off and calm the situation down, and Baker acted her ultimately. But through that process, she ultimately just saw someone through a telemedicine, kind of maybe a doctor through telemedicine, was given a prescription that was never filled and was ultimately back on the street with no real resolution to the problem. So we do have a system that is not functioning the way it should, and before we put the money into it, I think we need to look at how we best set it up so that this does not continue to occur in these cases.
Great. So let's kind of, Representative Baxter,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Well, I think there is a fundamental problem in how we identify mental health. And the thing is, in the healthcare model, as you've heard from Dr. Pigman, there's a very different understanding with healthcare that is more tangible and visible, as opposed to something that is far more difficult to get your arms around and to keep people on medication who don't want to take medication. It's more complicated. And I have a son who's trying to make a living as a psychiatrist, and I can tell you the reward system and the way we reward healthcare delivery and mental health care delivery is drastically different. He's the stepchild of the healthcare model. And I see that, and I get in these conversations with him every day, and until we understand that we have to look at that investment the same way we do physical health and that these are interrelated. The physical health results for these mental health people is horrible if you see what's happening. And there needs to be better integration. We've seen this at the centers where they've actually brought in a healthcare model in the mental health community. These are very related, both their physical health and their mental health. But I visited 12 prisons in the last year, and every one of them have massive arenas that are just devoted to containing, because what happens is mental health people wind up violating the law, and they wind up there. Their underlying issue is their mental health issue. And it's very hard to get your arms around it. But we have to reassess the whole model and say, how do we approach that and handle that humanely, and how do we give proper credit to mental health issues just as we do physical health issues, and this connection between them. So, I've got one son that's a deputy, and I've got one son that's a psychiatrist. You can get Baker acted pretty quick around my house. So, we have this code. I'm more worried about the memory loss issues. So I'm like, if I'm saying the wrong thing, we have a code, and it's the biscuits are burning. You just tell Dad the biscuits are burning, and I'll shut up and go sit down in my rocker, and you don't have to do anything. So, and this is what we have to do, is confront the reality that these are not easy things to deal with. They're not as tangible as splinting a leg, but they're just as real and devastating if we don't engage them. And if we keep handling these mental health issues as stepchildren, and we don't compensate in the same format so that somebody can make a living taking care of these needs and get more of these people in trials. We have a lot of people that we help by getting them in these test models so they can get access to medication and somebody maintaining a relationship with them. And then this ownership on reentry. That's part of it, is somebody that understands the nature of this person and helps them identify and kind of case manage them as it can be the extended family, it can be a mentor, caseworker, guide, it can be the following through the DOC, but something has to happen at the local level to pick them up coming out when you do get it under control, because they'll quit taking their medicine and reappear in St. Petersburg or take off for Philadelphia, and here they're in violation of parole and they're back in prison. And so until we change how we look at that model, that mental health is just as important to us as physical health, and that physical health is devastated by not treating mental health. Those numbers are horrible, how young people die who have mental health issues so they don't take care of their physical health. They're horrible. And so I think as a humane society, we need to own that and say, how do we readjust that model? And he's just hatched a few good ideas I really hadn't thought about. So we're really identifying, we've let the mental health issue wind up in prison. And so the good part is that's a place we have control of things. We could redesign the model. Thank you.
Let's take our focus all the way to a different direction. Let's go all the way to the very front end. The question I want to talk about is the Florida Department of Juvenile Justice has seen a remarkable decrease in the number of youth arrested in Florida over the past few years. Part of this is because the department has talked to stakeholders over a couple of years and did meetings all around the state, and as a result, they switched their focus from the residential and back end to the prevention and diversion front end on that part of the continuum. So do you support that focus to the prevention? Representative Pilon, the author of the bill. Is that a softball or what?
Yeah.
Hit it, Ray.
Seriously, though, I think it's evident by the change in our attitude towards juvenile justice. It is working. We have a lot more to do. We'll be doing more things this year on a direct file and some of the other things that we've talked about. What we heard from the representative from the governor's office in Georgia the other day, they've done it in reverse. They did their adult criminal justice system first, and now are looking at juvenile justice reform. So we can learn from each other on that. There were some great things there. So I think the best reason I can think of, and we're obviously beating a horse here with me, but the best thing I can think of to leave you with as a takeaway, all the stuff we're talking about of the resources for the adult community, mental health, reentry, all of those things can be more manageable if we have less than 100,000 people in our prisons, and the way to do that is to keep our young people out of that system.
Representative Jones.
Thank you. Just yesterday, Representative Edwards, for our delegation, did the criminal justice panel discussion, and direct filing and civil citation is some of the things that we spoke of. But one of the things that dealing with civil citation that I wasn't aware of was the fact that how it's not consistent in some of our cities, to where maybe the BSO, they enforce the civil citation program. But some other city, I don't want to call a city and get quoted that I'm calling them out. So another city do not provide, you guys know how that go, right? It'll get tweeted in 5 seconds. But another city does not provide the civil citation program. So what ends up happening is that child gets to the same JAC, the Juvenile Assessment Center, but it's done differently. And I did not know that. So I believe that we need to find some type of consistency, that if there's one department that's doing it, that all the departments are doing the same thing to make sure that those children are treated the same way.
Yeah. Representative Pilon?
Yeah, to follow up, and then it kind of segues into another question you had, Barney. I think it's good. I've been approached, obviously, on that very issue. When we initially did that bill, when I did it in 2010 on the juvenile citations, we had in there the word shall. In order to get that passed and off the ground, we had to make it may. And I believed at that time that we should have discretion with our law enforcement officers in our communities because everything's different. You're correct, and I won't even tell you how many we haven't written in this county. But it's not all about, the question is, should we make it mandatory? The Department of Juvenile Justice has worked very hard in each of the circuits around to get a buy-in on this. We're not there yet, so I wanted them to continue that effort. Making it mandatory, like the group SURE here in Sarasota, which is very prominent in dealing with this issue, making it mandatory is a tough sell with our law enforcement people. But when I gathered a group of stakeholders here about 2 weeks ago. All of our police chiefs, the sheriff, court administrator, public defender, state attorney, service providers. One of the problems we have is, and we're going to address this, is that not only is it inconsistent for varying reasons around the state, it's inconsistent because of the type of diversion or intervention programs that are or are not available. I am due a report from DJJ on an audit of every county and every circuit so we can see where those gaps are. So I don't want to bring the hammer down yet, but I'm certainly willing to look at how we can beef it up.
Thank you for that, Rep. Pilon. I feel like we're in a committee meeting. Thanks for that, Rep. Pilon. But even in speaking of the inconsistency that we speak of, let me give you a fresh example. Just yesterday, after leaving church, one of our youth, he shared with me that he got arrested he lit a garbage can on fire in the bathroom. The garbage can did not get out of hand. He got arrested in a city that does not recognize civil citation. So once he got to the JAC Assessment Center, the state put forth between 15 to 30 years for him. 15 to 30 years. He took a plea, took 5-year probation. So now he's 19, cannot get a job, and cannot go to school. And so after speaking with the sheriff, I was on the way here, I was sharing with him about that. He said that if it would have came through BSO, that wouldn't have happened. Because now this kid has to carry that burden for the rest of their life. Now guess what? Now what ends up happening next is now he goes into our criminal justice system because this child, he's frustrated, and he's frustrated with the system because now we have incarcerated.
Right. So before, I know Representative Vasalina wants to say something, I'll just tell you, the position of the Florida Smart Justice Alliance is we're opposed to mandating civil citations. We believe that law enforcement has to have the discretion. There have been bills filed, thankfully they've never seen the light of day, but we don't believe that if a kid tells an officer to go F themselves, that that officer is responsible for giving that child or that youth a civil citation. It should be up to the discretion of an officer. And I think it goes to the second point that Representative Pilon was talking about, Representative Jones, which is every community, we have a template for a civil citation. There's only about 7 counties in the state that don't have them. Most of them are small and rural. Doesn't mean every police department within those counties is bought in. But work with that local law enforcement and get them acclimated with the sheriff's department, because it can happen in some places. The whole county and the police departments are covered. But we've got a lot of law enforcement that thinks a lot of different ways, and we're opposed to mandating that as a first-time encounter. Representative Vasalina.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Barney, and the Smart Justice Alliance, because the Civil Justice Citation pilot program began in Tallahassee. And so I really appreciate your effort, your work, and in the effort of the juvenile assessment and the police department in Tallahassee. And just wanted to really thank you for that, because without you, I think that program would not have the effect that it's having now. So thanks a lot. That's
Well,
it.
it wasn't really me. It was Tom Oak right over there from Disc Village that
Where are you,
thought
Tom?
it up 21 years ago. Representative Pilon.
Yeah, we'll bring it in for a landing here. I hear you, Rep, and I've talked to Katie, obviously, Representative Edwards. The worst thing we want to do, and that's why I'm hesitant about mandatory, the worst thing we want to do is to make an enemy of our law enforcement by telling them that, especially a sheriff who's a constitutional officer, the real trick is to continue to educate. And there are I was here all week, a lot of law enforcement in this room, a lot of buy-in with this philosophy. It's coming. The discretion still has to be there. I know, I spent 20-some years, and discretion is not always easy. Not always easy with it when you're there. So we really want to keep on the positive path. Yeah, we could do that in the legislature and say, boom, let's put shall back in there. But I think we can work on it, and I think we can get a lot more buy-in. So I hope you'll be with me on that. All right, thank you.
Let's
Thank you,
switch
Bernie.
gears a little bit again, and let's go to another area that we've been talking about here. That's faith-based programming. This has shown definite signs of making Florida prisons safer, because the Department of Corrections in their dormitories has been able to document over the last few years that every prison that's got a faith-based dormitory, they have less disciplinary reports and less problems. That not only makes it safer for the inmates, but just as importantly, it makes it safer for the guards. And those are people that have to deal with these inmates every day. So wanted to ask, do any of y'all support the idea of increasing even more the number of faith-based dormitories? And the department's even created 3 faith-based prisons. What do you think about increasing that even more? Anybody? Representative Baxter.
Well, this is the heartbeat of this whole matter with me, and it's how I got started and involved with this. Was Allison DeFore confronted me with the reality of what's there. And there's a compass change that everyone needs, and I think the faith and character-based piece is essential. It doesn't matter how many VOTEC courses I give you if you don't have a heart change and a direction change. And there has to be some facilitation of that occurring. And those areas that have done this is why I'm very excited about next year. I am absolutely stunned by the culture shift that occurred in the bloodiest prison in America. And you're going to hear some things. And there's actually more steeples than there are guard towers there now. And they have liberated, and they've done it without any problem. And when we have the same experience in our faith and character-based prison, as long as you have an open door, and you're not advocating any one religion or anything, you're allowing people to come on team and become a part of people's lives. But the culture shift comes when it's about what can I give instead of what can I take. And when that culture shift comes, and you can see it, it changes the relationship and the safety of correction officers and the inmates. And it also changes the relationship of what they're going to do with each other and what they're going to do in reentry and how they're going to relate. Plague of fatherlessness. 95% of the men in prison hate their father hates them, or they don't know who their father is. And it's probably true of the women. We could begin a fatherhood initiative in this faith and character-based approach that could allow them to become good fathers again and say, you don't have to do what I did. Son, you can make a different path. You can make a different choice. It doesn't mean there is so much potential in releasing this and re-identifying it as a way of following and connecting to people that will follow them when they come out. This reentry and this faith-based and character-based piece are very interrelated. Because if you build relationship, some of the strongest advocates I hear in here are people who have built strong relationship with these inmates, and they're going to continue that relationship as they enter. That will bring long-term change. And so I'm very excited about that direction. We have made some strides. There's some good stuff in the statute already, and they're already, we're right in the midst of instituting one of the big pieces for Angola was letting a seminary come in. And Warden Kane told me, he said, I didn't know that was the big deal. I've done a lot of things to try to change where some of these folks were going. But I didn't really know what I had a hold of. But when they started having about 200 inmates in there in that programming, and there are all kind of people in that programming, training them how to serve other people. Now they got hospice where inmates take care of inmates, because some of those people have nowhere to go. They're there forever. When they start learning how to give instead of take, and the joy of it, it changes the whole culture, the safety environment, the reentry success. And I cannot emphasize enough my desire to see us be supportive of the department's efforts. They're trying to move forward on this. But I think, I've been in Wakulla with Allison. He's now, a lot of you know Allison and his history, but the most outstanding thing is he's now the Episcopal priest, and his congregation is behind wire. And I went in there with him, and he says, you're an ordained something, aren't you? And I said, well, I'm a Baptist deacon. But, he says, well, you can serve communion with me. But as I communed with those people, I realized they're just people. I met a banker. He's smarter than me. But he slept with the babysitter. He went to prison. That guy's more afraid of re-entering. Right now, he is teaching people how to do personal finance, how to have a different life when they come out. He's preparing a lot of people. Breaking this barrier when we could let inmates help inmates. These veterans dorms in there where they become a unit. It's like they're back in boot camp. They take care of each other. They correct each other. These are things that are culture shifts that can change these numbers. And I think it's centered in cutting loose this ingredient of the faith and character-based piece. Thank you.
Anybody else got a sermon? I'm right with you, Representative Baxley. Great.
Appreciate the amens out there.
Amen.
Amen. All right. Let me ask another question. Before the recession wreaked havoc on Florida's economy, we had about only 2,000 diversion beds in the entire state of Florida for people that were involved in the criminal justice system that had the potential of not having to go to prison because they didn't score high enough. They could be diverted. 2,000 beds for 20 million people in Florida. Today, because of the budget cuts we had to take, we've just gotten it back up to 1,217, right, Mark? So we're still 800 beds short, 1,244 beds. So what do y'all think as legislators about trying to increase the number of diversion beds for people that don't score high enough to go to prison, but still need the help with their addiction? So would anybody like to comment about that?
Yes.
Representative Esselin.
Yes, I would like to see more money. That's it, yes.
Good. And that was because I came through that program. Yes, Representative Pilon.
Well, Barney, absolutely. I don't think there's anybody that's been involved in this that wouldn't like to see that restored at least to its other level. But everything we've talked about today, if it's increasing those type of beds, more diversion problems, more diversion programs, reentry, front end, all of this, on and on and on. I can say one thing. It only takes, the philosophy is there. I think the policy can be there. And I don't care whether it's water or criminal justice. You can have all the great policy in the world, but it takes one thing, and it's called cha-ching. So until we start emphasizing the fact that the investment dollars, and you talk about front-end investment, this is all front-end investment. And we will realize the benefits in the future, but it has to come from the top. It has to come from both houses, the Attorney General, everybody. And we depend on you, not just to be the out there, waving a flag and holding up signs in front of the Capitol, but events like this and the messages that we'll get back through the legislators that are here, I think is most critical in advancing all of those causes. Everything, I went down my list. We didn't get to all the questions, Martin, but I went, yes, no, maybe, and I'll get back to you on that. But the resounding theme of all of them was the resources necessary to move in the direction that you and I would challenge any of my members on this panel to tell me that these aren't all good causes and that they need more resources. So let's get doing it, folks. Appreciate it.
Okay. I've got two last questions that I want to ask y'all. One is about developmentally disabled individuals is a growing problem in our criminal justice system. In some cases, just an officer touching an individual could cause them to act out inappropriately. Would you support additional training for law enforcement if they want to have this kind of training and in our jails? And what else do you think that we can do to help the developmentally disabled who are in our criminal justice system? Do I want Representative Geller? No?
Yes, I would support it, yes.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yes.
Yes.
Everybody raise their hand and want to say yes.
Okay.
Barney, I'll make an additional comment. A few years ago, I had a budget amendment to try to divert money spent on the death penalty to better trained and better equipped law enforcement. And I think this would be a great place for that money to go, because we still are spending too much money on the death penalty, despite what Representative Gates has tried to do.
So the final question is about sex exploitation or commercial sex trafficking is a growing problem in Florida. By the way, not just for girls, but for boys as well.
Yeah.
Florida is now number 3 in the entire United States for this insidious and heinous crime. What do you think what more do you think that we can do to help attack and address this issue? Anybody? Representative Pilon.
Well, we started already. Many of you may or may not know, but Representative Spano last year convened an informal caucus group that many of us sat on, dealing with this very situation. Out of that came, yes, some increased penalties for the people that are bringing these people into these professions, and some better law to deal with the facts of it. And in addition, the ability not to prosecute the people that are being sex trafficked with an adult, because normally you just lock the prostitute up and they go back out the next day. So as a result of that, we're starting to see programs. Attorney General Bondi is a big advocate of it. Right here in this area, in the Tampa, Manatee, Sarasota area, we have Selah Freedom House, which is having great success. Go to their website. There are others around the state. We as a legislature have to promote that. Legislatively by policy, and yes, again, cha-ching, but we're kind of at the infant stages of it and really have to find out what good is being done, how many are being graduated, what are the problems, and we've heard some of that in this conference. So I think the answer to your question, Barney, from my point of view, is to keep on doing what we're doing in that direction and letting the people in the field that know what the real problems are with these victims. So you got the two sides, the people that are the criminals that are really bringing them into it, and then the victims themselves. And it's really a victims advocacy program.
Representative Jacobs and then Vassal.
There is a bill I know that is being currently worked, and it deals with a victim who either filmed or recorded, and that evidence was thrown out. And when victims bring information forward, it's a very difficult process. Societally, we still don't accept what the victim is telling us. And I think we need to do a better job of protecting the victims and liberating them to some degree to be able to say what happened, and for the courts to acknowledge that and use that in an effective way. Domestic violence and sexual predators are amongst us all the time.
Right.
And to the degree to which it is now becoming even more organized and profitable in the state of Florida is very scary, and I commend Attorney General Bondi for taking this on to the degree that she has, and as a new legislator, really want to do what I can, and a mother and a grandmother of 3, want to do everything I can to help move it forward.
So let me tell you what Representative Jacobs is talking about. Representative Tom Goodson has filed a bill which says that any youth that is being sexually abused would have an exception under the law to legally be able to tape record a conversation with the abuser, and that it would be legal in a court of law. So, great idea. Representative Vassalinda for the last comment.
Yes, you know, I had the privilege of working with Representative Spano on that working group, and it wasn't a committee. It was one of the most effective things we did last year, and I was very, very pleased and proud to do that. But I think that we're all legislators up here, and so we're going to look at this from a legislative solution. But one of the groups that came and presented in front of our working group was from Tampa, and it was a junior league. And they had done such a tremendous job with public relations, with billboards, with a branding of a message that was out there. And I guess we can't forget the partnership of advocates and all kinds of groups to come and help solve problems. I think that's what we really need to do, and this summit is doing that, but I think we need to make sure that it's all of us and that we're not ignoring anything, and that we're honest and courageous enough to look into our communities and say, you know, these things need to be solved, these things need to be faced. So thanks so much, Barney.
This is our 4th summit. This is the largest number of legislators that we've ever had. Democrats, Republicans, freshmen, senior legislators, House and Senate. So let's give them a big thank you for being here.